If you sat down to play Dungeons & Dragons in the late 1970s, you were signing up for a brutal tactical grinder. Adventure design of the era relied heavily on the funhouse dungeon. This meant throwing random, entirely disconnected monsters into adjacent rooms for the sole purpose of rapidly eliminating player characters. At official conventions, your success was calculated through cold, hard math. Tournament organizers tallied your final score by simply adding up the gold pieces you extracted and the monsters you managed to slay. This rigid, extraction-based math actively penalized anyone trying to roleplay. If your group creatively snuck past a sleeping dragon or negotiated with a goblin king, you scored 0 points for the encounter because there was no body count. Then, in 1980, TSR hired a designer named Frank Mentzer. Corporate management gave him a straightforward mandate: build an official fan club to wrangle the company's exploding player base. Mentzer took that mandate and built the Role-Playing Game Association, the RPGA. To understand the shift, look at this logic chart. On the left is the old formula, where gold and kills equaled victory. Instead of rewarding raw math, the new RPGA system relied on collaboration. The dungeon master and the players voted at the end of the session, awarding points for consistent character acting and creative deduction. But a new scoring system was useless without an adventure designed to support it. To prove qualitative voting worked in a competitive setting, Mentzer had to write a module that discarded the standard rules of engagement. That test case arrived in 1982 with a module called the Investigation of Hydell. It placed players in the unexpectedly prosperous town of Nimbortan. Nimbortan's wealth came from a bizarre economic anomaly, an influx of servants known as slinks. These semi-human laborers were perfectly clean, endlessly obedient, and fully sanctioned by the local church. A suspicious local cleric hires the players to look into the slink trade, but with a strict caveat: they are forbidden from drawing their weapons or breaking local municipal laws. To bypass the heavily guarded slink compound, the adventure offered a Trojan horse mechanic. Players could pool their resources, pose as wealthy merchants, and set up a fake slave purchase to gain access inside. This altered the standard dungeon crawl. Instead of kicking down doors, the party was running a high-stakes undercover espionage operation, where a single slipped word would blow their cover and end the mission. By stripping away the option to hack and slash, the module forced players to rely on their wits. It proved that a tabletop game could generate massive tension through social deduction, rather than relying on a depleting pool of hit points. Mentzer built Hydell using a concept he called logical ecology. Instead of a random assortment of beasts, the dungeon functioned as a coherent, working socio-economic complex. Notice how this blueprint visualizes the dungeon's internal logic. Rather than fighting, players gained the upper hand by tracking slink intake nodes, deciphering encrypted sales ledgers, and mapping out the specific bribes paid to the local monitor guild. At the center of this economic web sat a horrifying revelation. The happy, clean slink servants were actually reanimated zombies. The mechanical execution of this twist was brilliant. Mentzer used the standard recognizable combat statistics for large zombies, but entirely removed their rotting flesh and foul odors. He then masked the creatures with a magical aura to explain away their lack of sleep or hunger. By doing so, he used the official monster manuals as a trap, baiting veteran players into misidentifying the threat. Because players could no longer rely on their out-of-character knowledge of standard monster lore, the design successfully forced them to actively engage with the evidence within their environment. Hydell successfully proved the viability of narrative role-playing, yet almost immediately, the module was swallowed by corporate turbulence. Around the mid-1980s, Dungeons & Dragons co-creator Gary Gygax relocated from Wisconsin to California to chase television and film deals. His prolonged absence left a power vacuum at headquarters. TSR underwent severe restructuring, sparking a bitter conflict between new management and old guard designers like Mentzer. Before the split, Mentzer's expansive personal campaign world, a continent known as Aquaria, was slated to become official canon within the famous World of Greyhawk setting, with Hydell acting as the gateway. The new management permanently shelved the Aquaria expansion. Hydell's geography was scrubbed from the official maps, leaving the module as a disconnected, uncanonical fragment of tabletop history. While the adventure itself faded from store shelves, the RPGA organization that birthed it survived. This network became the engine for organized play, eventually creating the massive living campaigns that allowed thousands of players to record their narrative choices in a shared world. By rewarding character immersion and logic over body counts, the Investigation of Hydell showed that tabletop games could handle institutional critique, proving that the story of a world is often more dangerous than the monsters